Buying a car can feel like guesswork. Is it really the right price, or should you wait? With Car Gurus, you get unbiased deal ratings, price change history, and trusted dealer reviews, so you can spot a great deal and buy with confidence. Go to cargurus.co.uk for complete vehicle details without any surprises. That's cargurus.co.uk. cargurus.co.uk. Car Gurus. Search. Buy. Sorted.
Hello and welcome once again to the Near Futurist Podcast. My name is Guy Clapperton. If you're a regular listener, you'll be aware of what comes first, so here's a quick plug for my media training service at Clapperton Media Training.
Do you or your clients want to sound as confident, clear and fluent in media interviews as the people in this podcast? Of course you do. My team and I can help. Drop my assistant Lindsay, that's lindsay@clapperton.co.uk, a note, and she'll set us a time for an initial chat. Or go to the website at clapperton.co.uk, 2 Ps, to find out more. Now, back to the podcast.
And that's enough of that. This week and next, we'll be looking at the thorny problem of cybersecurity. Now, I've been writing about that for over 30 years, and people are still using their pets' names as password, which tells me something very important. Nobody's been listening. My guest has been listening, though, if not to me, then to other people with the same message. He has a proven track record of scaling and exiting technology businesses, having previously led North and Demovo through successful transactions. With a background spanning senior roles at Dell Computer Center and Lenovo, he brings experience in enterprise technology, strategic partnerships, and M&A-led growth. He's known for building high-performance teams and positioning businesses for scale, value creation, and long-term success. He's chief executive of Cyberfort, and his name is Glen Williams. Glen, welcome.
Welcome. Thanks, Guy. Good to meet you, and delighted to be here today.
Well, thank you very much indeed. So, for someone who doesn't work in cybersecurity, what problem would you say Cyberfort actually exists to solve?
Well, like any cybersecurity business, I guess the way to think about it is taking it back to security and physical security. That's the way I think about it. I'm not a cybersecurity guru, but if you think about your house, what does a security company do to protect your house? Why do you have a lock on your door? Why do you have an alarm on your house? Why would you have that sort of security in your house, or physical security? Well, a cybersecurity does that exactly the same thing, but from a technology perspective, and keeps you secure and keeps your technology and your infrastructure and your application secure. So rather than keeping your physical security, i.e. your house, secure, we keep everything else moving and working that's technologically led. That's what cybersecurity companies do, protect you and protect your technology investments.
Okay, now a lot of people think that cybersecurity is just about stopping hackers. That's very important, of course, but what else is there, and what do the public misunderstand about the real risks that businesses face?
Well, risks are pervasive. They're there every single minute of every day. I think that hacking is one part of it. And when people are talking about hacking, they're talking about people trying to breach someone's internal IT systems to try and find a way through, to find information and try and get data or get hold of something that can cause a problem to the business. So that's kind of what hacking is doing. They're trying to hack into a system. That's just one part of what people do. I guess the real risk around cybersecurity is the fact that, if you're not looking after yourself and protecting your business and making sure you're resilient, somebody can get in and can do some serious damage to your organization. Again, I'll take it back to the physical security of a house. It's the same type of principle. If you're not protecting your house and doing all the right types of things that you need to do, it depends how much you value your house as well. How important is your house? If your house is a shed at the end of the garden, you don't need to put ring doorbells and all kinds of other sort of things around it to keep it safe and secure. But if you've got a multi-million-pound house you want to keep safe and secure, you should put the right level of physical security around it. Same in cyber. It's exactly the same principle. Your data, your information is incredibly important than what you've got. And it's not just a case of protecting your business. Legally, there's responsibility on an organization and the directors to show the right levels of security are in place. So it's not just hacking. Hacking is the way in. Is the way that somebody will get into an organization. But that's just one element of it. Cybersecurity is much broader than that.
I still hear people say things like that they're covered, they've got their antivirus up to date, things like that. These are mostly micro businesses, not the larger businesses, of course. But when people come to you, what's the first thing that tells you that they're exposed, even when they think they're fine?
Well, normally they think they're fine. So that's the big issue. So what you have to do is, it's almost like when you go, I keep using analogies here, but when you go and see a doctor and you think there's nothing wrong with you, and you do an MOT checkup, and they say, well, actually, you've got all these issues wrong with you, you've got to do something about it. It's a very similar approach that we would take. So we would do something called like a threat model, as an example, where we would go in and do some initial work. We'll also do some penetration testing. So that is hacking. We'll demonstrate how easy it is to get into somebody's system and network. Because often they'll say, well, we haven't got a problem here. We've got cybersecurity insurance. We've got an IT service provider that's protecting us. We've bought all the right software and all that kind of stuff. So we don't need any help. I think the reality is, in fact, that I'd say 99% of companies come to us with that approach. It's very rare that someone will come to you and say, we need to do something. The people who do that are the ones who've been breached, i.e. the ones who've been hacked. Typically, people who've not had anything or not had attack or breach, they think there's nothing wrong. So what you have to do is, unfortunately, you have to show them where the challenges are, where the breaches are, and a threat model or something like that will show somebody, this is how somebody could get into your organization. This is how easy it could be. At the most kind of practical level, if I was talking about that, how would you do that in a real world? You could, for example, I've seen this done before, where people would wear a high-vis jacket and go into an office and somehow get through the security you need to get to and be sitting with their feet up on the CEO's desk, tapping on his laptop. That's an example of showing somebody how easy it is to breach someone's security. You could do that literally, which is what that was, or you can do it virtually, which is what we would be doing. So people don't know they've got a problem until they've actually been hacked. That's 99% of the time. So what we have to do is show them this is what the problem could be. And that's what our job is.
I may be stretching this a little too far, but you use the doctor analogy. There is also the issue of people actually telling the doctor the truth when they ask difficult questions like, how much do you drink every week? So I'm wondering if you get people coming and giving you almost a deliberately rosier picture than there actually is.
I think some of it's deliberate, but I think a lot of it isn't deliberate because they don't know what they don't know. So known unknowns and all that kind of stuff that was spoken about in the past, people don't really know because it's an area of, people associate that the IT guy should know this stuff because it's in IT and technology. But cybersecurity is kind of, it's a risk issue and a security issue, less of an IT issue. IT is the mechanism that people are getting into this, but it's a security issue. And so they just assume that the IT guy knows what he's doing, and the IT guy possibly thinks he knows what he's doing. So it's not deliberate, but they're not experts. And that's why when you asked earlier, what is it companies like us do? We are experts in this space. You have to have certain certifications. You have to have certain qualifications. This is really an expert-led technology field. And you mentioned in the introduction, I have worked for many technology businesses. This is the first industry that I've worked in where you actually have to be experts. You can't pretend to be an expert in this. You really have to know what you're doing. And I think that's the big difference between this and other technology sectors. So to answer your question, the reason that we exist is because you need to have experts coming in. Another example could be, if you think about in the UK, a gas safety certificate, you have to have a gas engineer come around. He has to be accredited and have all the right things. You couldn't just get a guy off the streets to come and get your insert and do some testing on your boiler. It just couldn't work that way. You would have to get someone who's an expert and knows what they do. But then the problem is you just go and do one thing. You just got your certificate there and say, look, I'm protected now. Well, actually, you're not. You probably want to put a CO2 sensor up just to make sure you're safe. Or you want to put other things around the house to make sure that the right emissions are not coming out, et cetera, et cetera. So it's that type of thing that's done. People think they're safe because they've got the piece of paper, and they think they're safe because they might have had an expert round. But what they need to do, it needs to be ongoing and continuous. And that's when people talk about cyber resilience. That's what they're talking about.
Indeed, and that's a very important concept. I know also that you talk a lot about licensing. A lot of people see licenses for software as just an inconvenience and a load of old paperwork. But I understand you have very strong feelings about what they actually do in terms of having sufficient licenses for your organization.
Well, I mean, so us, it's slightly different. Organizations need to be covered and protected and have the right number of licenses. Because we're a managed services provider or a managed security services provider, we actually buy the licenses ourselves. So we're delivering it as a managed service. So we protect organizations, and we're just doing it on a number of endpoints or whatever devices they've got. But yeah, you do need to be protected from a license. And the most important thing actually is just making sure you're up to date, the most latest, most relevant versions of the software. That's probably the most important thing that organizations do.
That makes a lot of sense. And some breaches and or failures don't actually start with a clever attack, with something boring being ignored. Can you think of any examples of those from your clients?
Not from our clients, because our clients don't get breached. So he says...
From your prospects or people who later recovered and became your clients. Good catch, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. We've got an incident response team. So an incident response team, they get stood up when companies do get breached, and they're asked to go in and figure out, do some forensic work to understand what's happened and get organizations back up and running. Typically, there are some sophisticated ways that you see people do this. Some of the less sophisticated ways that I've seen, I'll give you one. I'll give you a semi-sophisticated one and a very unsophisticated one. Semi-sophisticated, there was a company called Arup, A-R-U-P, an engineering organization. I think it happened out in Hong Kong. If people Google Arup cyber breach, they'll see it out there. So it's no secret. That was done through a deep fake, and it was done through a Teams call. And the guy thought he was talking to the CFO, and there were 2 or 3 other finance people on the call telling him to transfer $25 million. Now, it wasn't a particularly brilliant deep fake, to be honest with you. So that's why I said it was semi-sophisticated. But it was good enough for the guy to transfer $25 million, and that's what they did. So deep fake is one way of doing things. That was semi-sophisticated. It's a lot more sophisticated now. Typically, you'll see things with deep fake and on Teams or whatever it might be, where you can only literally, probably by looking and staring at someone's eye or their glasses or the reflection on their glasses, you might be able to see some small thing there, but it's minor. You have to be so careful with things like that. So deep fake video is one way. It's semi-sophisticated and becoming more sophisticated. Some other more simplistic ways, through a QR code, people scanning a QR code that gets you straight into things that you want to get into, is one way. One of the most recent ones, I'm not going to say, there's been a number of recent attacks in the UK. I think they've all been publicised of what happened. The issue with these ones has been through the supply chain, i.e. not the organisations directly themselves, but the suppliers of that service to the company. And they were pretty simple things. People were just phoning the help desk and saying, can you reset my password? So that kind of thing was relatively straightforward and simple. So it gets more sophisticated. There are some very sophisticated people who can do some quite interesting things around deepfake. But the examples I've given you there's some that are semi-sophisticated and some that are pretty straightforward.
Yeah, very sort of blunt instrument sort of thing. Yeah. Another thing I'd like to pick up on, you mentioned earlier that people felt this should be taken care of because the IT guys got this. At what point does cybersecurity stop being an IT issue and actually become a boardroom issue or management issue if you're not a massive enterprise company? When does it start being pervasive throughout an organization like that?
It should start from day one. I'm chairman of a business that's got 20 employees, and we've got, it's on our priority list. It's all about risk management. So you've got to understand what is the likelihood and what is the impact of something happening to your organization. If you're a complete firewall type company that you operate on an island and don't need to interface with anything, then the risk is very limited. But that's not the case for most organizations that all require technology. So I would say the challenge is more not the fact the board see it as a risk. Even in smaller businesses, everybody sees it as a risk. It's an existential risk, an existential threat to a company. The challenge is that the IT guy, they trust the IT guy. They think the IT guy knows what he's doing. And he sort of does, but he can't be he's a jack of all trades. This guy is in a smaller organization. He's looking after the infrastructure, he's supporting the applications. He's typically come from an infrastructural application background. He's not a cybersecurity expert. So this is why you see me raising the flag and waving the banner of saying you need to bring in experts. This is the one area of technology or anything you need to bring in an expert, because it's more than just an IT problem. This is a risk it's an existential risk to a company if it goes wrong.
There are CEOs who will only want to know what happens if it goes wrong. How do you explain the risk to them that they're actually going through?
It's like anything, I'd say to them things like their insurance. So again, thinking about when you're driving a car, some of them want to understand, what's the benefit of this? Well, if you're a 21-year-old who just passed your driving test, you put a black box recorder on, your insurance premium goes down. If you go and work with a cybersecurity expert, guess what happens? Your insurance premium goes down. Your cyber insurance premium goes down. So working with people like us would drive that. So it's a really simple concept. It's about risk and insurance. It's how you take health. I'll say to the CEO, you take health and safety. It's important to your business. Well, yeah, it's a risk if somebody falls over. So, well, this is much more important than that, because if somebody gets into your company could be gone. So, and there are countless examples of that having happened. So, I think you just need to it's not fear mongering, but it's just making people aware. You have to speak to people in their language, not use acronyms, not use cyber talk. You just got to explain to them it's about risk and insurance, and making sure you've taken the right level of insurance out. I don't mean insurance in terms of insurance premium. I mean levels of insurance, by making sure you've got the right supplier, the right experts protecting you. That's what you need to do. Most CEOs kind of get it. They do understand it. They don't always like paying for it, because it feels like it's an insurance policy you're paying for that it might never happen. But that's why you have insurance policies. So if it does ever happen, then you're protected.
If you were to, just to round off this first part of the interview, if a business could fix only one thing this year to reduce cyber risk, let's say they've taken no reaction, they've got a package, maybe something like Kaspersky or one of the packaged versions. What else should they do? What precaution could they take to reduce cyber risk at first glance?
I mean, the first thing you need to do is, because most of these are human issues, so you've got to train your staff in any company. You have to train your staff, and you have to make them aware of what the risks are, because it's human error, human issues that let people in. So, I mean, the fundamental, most companies do this, but you need to do some form of cyber training and make people aware of the risks for phishing emails or whatever it might be. We do this all the time, continuously. Most companies I know do this. But if there was one thing they weren't doing, I would do that. The second thing I would do is, if you are doing that and you still want to make sure you're safe and secure, is I'll do a threat model. And like I said, a threat model is the equivalent of me coming around to your house, and it's doing an analysis of your house. And I'm analysing where the biggest risks are, where, for damp or whatever it might be. I'm giving you a report and say, it's up to you now what you want to do. You can choose to leave this as it is, but these are the risks that are open to you. Or you can choose for somebody like us to come in and make the repairs and do what we need to do to make you safe and secure. And that's what you would do.
That makes a load of sense once again, and that's it for the first part of this interview, but there will be more, oh yes. So I'll say thank you very much indeed, Glen. Pop you on pause just for the moment, but everyone do come back next week when we'll talk about certification for its own sake and a great deal else. See you then.
Changes in sexual performance are more common than most people realize, and support doesn't need to feel awkward. With MedExpress, everything happens privately online. Start by completing a short consultation reviewed by UK-registered clinicians. If eligible, treatment is delivered discreetly to your home, with ongoing support whenever you need it. You're not alone in this. Visit medexpress.co.uk/podcast to learn more.